The arena of Carvas was carved from black stone and old victories. Every wall carried marks of battles fought by species that no longer existed. Above it all, cold lights floated like silent stars, watching without mercy. This was where champions proved worth or died trying. When the human walked out, the crowd did not roar. It hesitated. He was smaller than the others, thinner, wrapped in simple combat armor with no glowing runes or sharpened bone plates. His helmet was plain, scratched, and old, like it had already survived things it should not have. A ripple of laughter moved through the stands. At the highest balcony, a tall alien leaned forward, eyes bright with amusement. The alien species, the Velthari, were known apex hunters. They ruled hunting grounds across 7 systems and feared nothing that breathed. The Velthari commander laughed openly. "That is the fighter," he said, voice amplified across the arena. "That fragile thing." More laughter followed, sharp, mocking, confident. The human stopped at the center circle and looked up. He did not bow. He did not raise his fists. He simply stood there, breathing slow and steady, like he was listening to something far away. His name was Elias Rurk. Most did not know it. Those who did rarely spoke it aloud. Across the sand, the gate on the opposite side opened with a grinding roar. The ground shook as the challenger entered. The beast was a Korath reaver, all muscle and plated scales, its claws longer than the human's arm. The crowd cheered now. This was a real fight. The Velthari commander waved a dismissive claw. "End it quickly," he said. "I tire of jokes." The signal horn sounded. The reaver charged. Its speed shocked many, even those who had seen Korath before. Sand exploded beneath its feet as it crossed the arena in seconds, claws raised to tear the human apart. Elias did not run. He stepped forward. That single movement silenced a few voices. At the last moment, Elias shifted sideways, narrowly avoiding the first strike. The claw passed so close it sliced air from his chest, but he did not stumble. His hands moved fast, striking joints instead of armor. The reaver roared, more surprised than hurt. Laughter returned, louder now. "See," someone shouted, "he scratches it." But Elias' eyes had changed. They were calm, focused, empty of fear. The reaver attacked again, tail swinging like a hammer. Elias rolled beneath it, sand filling his visor, then came up behind the beast. He did not strike its back. He placed his palm against its spine. There was a sharp sound, a precise one. The reaver collapsed to one knee, confused, roaring in pain it did not understand. A few apex hunters leaned forward. "That was a nerve lock," one murmured. "Impossible through that armor." The Velthari commander frowned. The reaver lashed out wildly, catching Elias across the shoulder. The human flew backward, armor cracking as he hit the stone wall. A red smear followed him down. The crowd screamed in delight. Elias stayed down for a moment, long enough for doubt to creep in. Then he pushed himself up. Slowly, painfully. The human rolled his shoulder back into place with a sharp grunt. Blood ran from his arm, dark against pale armor. He did not wipe it away. He raised his head and looked at the reaver again. The beast hesitated. That pause was small, almost invisible, but the apex hunters noticed. Predators recognized hesitation. They understood what it meant. "This human," one whispered, "has been here before." The reaver charged again, rage replacing confidence. This time, Elias moved like he already knew every step. He ducked, struck, twisted, and vanished from where death should have landed. Each blow was not meant to kill, but to weaken, to dismantle piece by piece. He fought like someone who expected to survive. The laughter had stopped completely. High above, the Velthari commander slowly leaned back, his amusement fatting into something colder. His eyes narrowed as he watched the human fight with quiet efficiency. "This is not a joke," he said softly. Below, Elias Rurk stood bleeding, breathing hard, still facing the monster that should have ended him. The arena no longer mocked him. It waited. And somewhere in the stands, The apex hunters began to understand. The human was not prey. He was something else entirely. The reaver roared again, but the sound no longer carried certainty. It circled Elias now, claws scraping stone, eyes tracking every breath he took. Blood dripped from the human's armor, marking the sand with slow, honest drops. Pain burned through Elias' shoulder and ribs. Each breath reminded him of old scars, older battles, and promises made long before this arena ever existed. He did not think of winning. He thought of lasting. Across the stands, silence spread like a living thing. The apex hunters had seen countless fighters die bravely, screaming and charging until the end. This human was different. He conserved energy. He waited. He allowed pain to exist without letting it rule him. The reaver struck again, feinting high and slashing low. Elias barely avoided the first claw, but the second tore across his thigh. He fell to one knee, gasping as the crowd finally cried out, certain this was the end. The reaver raised both claws. Elias slammed his palm into the ground. A small device shattered beneath his hand, releasing a burst of blinding white light and a sharp shockwave. The blast did not harm the reaver, but it disoriented it just enough. Elias moved. He rolled forward under the descending claws, came up inside the creature's reach, and struck upward into the soft joint beneath its jaw. The impact echoed like metal on stone. The reaver screamed. It staggered back, shaking its head violently, smashing into the arena wall. Stone cracked, dust filled the air. The apex hunters stood now. That strike, one of them said slowly, was trained, military trained. The Velthari commander's claws dug into the railing. His laughter was gone completely. The reaver lunged again, slower now, movements less precise. Its confidence had been replaced by something unfamiliar. It hesitated between attacks, calculating, uncertain. Predators were not supposed to feel that. Elias limped backward, drawing the creature toward the center again. His vision blurred at the edges, warning him that his body was reaching its limit. He forced himself to breathe evenly, counting each step. He remembered a burned colony. Screams trapped under collapsing metal, a child's hand slipping from his grasp as evacuation ships lifted away. He remembered why he was still alive. The reaver charged one final time, putting everything into the attack. It leapt, claws wide, intent on crushing the human beneath its weight. Elias did not dodge. He ran forward. Gasps rippled through the crowd. At the last second, Elias slid beneath the creature's chest, driving both arms upward with every ounce of strength he had left. His blade, short and unremarkable, pierced a thin gap in the armor that most species never noticed. The reaver landed behind him. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the massive body trembled and collapsed sideways, shaking the arena as it hit the ground. Its breathing slowed, then stopped, eyes staring at nothing. The silence that followed was heavy and absolute. Elias stood there, swaying, his weapon still in hand. Blood soaked his armor, some his own, some not. He looked small next to the fallen monster, but no one laughed now. The arena erupted seconds later, not in mockery but shock. Some cheered, others shouted in disbelief. A few apex hunters remained silent, their expressions unreadable as they watched the human struggle to stay on his feet. Med drones descended, hovering cautiously, unsure if they were allowed to approach. Elias waved them away with a weak motion of his hand. He forced himself to stand straight. High above, the Velthari commander slowly rose. "So," he said, voice low and sharp, "the human survives." His gaze locked onto Elias, no longer amused, no longer dismissive. "This changes things." Below, Elias finally allowed himself to kneel, pressing his fist into the sand to keep from collapsing. He had won the fight, but the arena had not finished with him. He could feel it in the air. This was not about entertainment anymore. This was about interest. And interest among apex hunters was far more dangerous than laughter. The arena lights dimmed slightly, signaling a pause, but Elias did not move from the center circle. His chest rose and fell with heavy, uneven breaths, each one a battle in itself. The sand beneath him was sticky with blood and sweat, a silent record of the struggle he had endured. Around him, whispers of disbelief floated like smoke, reaching the ears of everyone who had doubted him. The Velthari commander descended from the balcony, claws tapping against stone. Every step he took radiated authority, yet his gaze lingered on Elias with a mixture of calculation and curiosity. "Impressive," he said, voice low, almost reverent. "Few humans survive a single round. You have faced an apex beast and lived." Elias lifted his head slowly, meeting the alien's eyes. There was no arrogance in his stance, only exhaustion and quiet determination. "I survive because I have to," he said, voice steady despite the pain. "I fight because I choose to." The commander's mandibles clicked, a sound of thought. "Choice," he murmured. The word was foreign in their language when spoken by a human, and yet it carried weight. Around the arena, the apex hunters exchanged glances, each one understanding that they had underestimated something far beyond normal calculations. Suddenly, the ground trembled. The Medrones hovered back, their sensors flaring red. From the far end of the arena, another gate began to open. This time, it was not a reaver. It was larger, deadlier. A hybrid hunter bred for speed and brutality, one that had claimed entire planets, worth of challengers in its short life. Its scales glimmered with a deep violet sheen, and eyes like molten silver locked onto Elias with lethal intent. The crowd erupted in nervous excitement, but Elias did not flinch. He had been ready. He had to be. The beast leapt forward with terrifying precision. Elias ducked, rolling beneath its claws, feeling the shockwave of wind as the attack narrowly missed him. He struck quickly at its joints, each hit measured and deliberate. But this was no reaver. This creature adapted instantly, countering moves with alarming speed. Pain shot through his ribs as the creature's tail slammed into him, sending him skidding across the arena. His visor cracked, scratching his cheek, but still he forced himself upright. Every fiber of his being screamed to retreat, to give up, yet he moved forward, blade in hand, calculating, anticipating, surviving. High above, the Velthari commander's eyes narrowed. He had never witnessed a human fight like this. Humans were reckless, emotional, fragile, but Elias was neither. He was something else entirely, something apex hunters did not yet understand. The creature roared, and the sound shook the arena like a quake. Elias dodged, countered, and struck again. Sparks flew as his blade scraped against hardened scales, the creature recoiling in surprise at a tactic it had never encountered. The crowd's cheers shifted into tense murmurs. Some shouted warnings to the human, others cursed at him for drawing such danger upon himself. But Elias ignored it all. Each movement was focused, each breath calculated. Survival was not instinct alone, it was knowledge, strategy, and willpower intertwined. Hours, or what felt like hours, passed in a blur of motion. The beast lunged, Elias ducked. It struck, Elias parried. Blood and sand mingled into an indistinct haze, yet the human's resolve remained unbroken. The apex hunters, watching closely, began to sense something extraordinary. This human did not fear the impossible. He embraced it. At one moment, the creature pinned him against a jagged wall, claws slicing dangerously close. Elias' vision blurred, and he felt a sting of doubt, but only for a heartbeat. Then he remembered every loss, every pain, every reason he had survived this long. With one surge of raw determination, he twisted, leveraging his weight, and drove the creature off balance. It stumbled, it fell, and for the first time it hesitated. The arena fell silent. Even the Medrones hovered motionless, their systems struggling to interpret what they were witnessing. Elias stood, panting heavily, every limb aching, every bone threatening to give out, yet unbroken. The hybrid hunter regarded him, eyes wide, not with malice but with recognition. This was not prey, it was a predator. The Velthari commander stepped forward, almost reverently. "Perhaps," he murmured, "humans are more than we believed." And in the shadows, the apex hunters began to whisper among themselves, voices tight with awe and fear. For the first time, they questioned their supremacy, not in arrogance but in truth. This human could change everything. Elias wiped blood from his visor, his chest heaving, and looked across the arena at the fallen beast. He did not smile. He did not celebrate. He only understood one thing clearly: the fight was far from over. And yet, somewhere deep inside, a spark of something unshakable ignited, a spark the Velthari could neither mock nor destroy. He had become more than human in their eyes. He had become a force they could not ignore. Elias barely had time to steady himself before the arena gates ground open again. This time, a dozen hunters emerged, each taller, faster, and sharper than the last. Apex hybrids bred for cunning, strength, and death moved in formation, their eyes gleaming with predatory intelligence. The crowd's roar was deafening, part fear, part thrill. The Velthari commander's mandibles clicked thoughtfully as he observed the scene. The human did not flinch. Every scar, every fracture, every sleepless night had brought him here. He knew fear, yes, but he also knew preparation. He sized them up in a glance, mapping weaknesses invisible to most. The hunters moved like a single entity, circling, testing, anticipating. Elias shifted his stance, muscles taut, heart hammering in rhythm with the distant drums of the arena. The first hunter lunged. Elias sidestepped, his blade carving a shallow line along its flank. It snarled, retreating only to circle back with renewed fury. The next charged from the opposite side, jaws snapping. Elias pivoted, striking its joints with precise blows. The hunters adjusted, learning fast, but Elias adapted faster. Every movement had purpose, every strike a message: he was not prey. The Velthari commander leaned forward, observing keenly. "He moves like a pack-trained apex," he muttered. "Yet he is alone. Impossible." Among the spectators, whispers spread. Humans were fragile, but Elias made them reconsider every belief. His limbs were worn, bleeding, yet his mind was razor-sharp, predicting attacks before the beasts even fully committed. A hybrid slammed into him from behind, knocking him into a jagged wall. Pain exploded across his ribs, yet he rolled, striking the creature with a precision that stunned onlookers. Another hunter lunged, but Elias feinted, leaving it to crash into its comrade. Chaos erupted in the ranks. Confusion, the one thing the apex hunters rarely experienced, had found a foothold among them. The human's breathing was ragged. Every muscle screamed in protest. Yet his eyes burned with a fire the Velthari had not seen in centuries, relentless, unwavering, alive. He shifted, used the terrain, slammed sand and debris into the hunter's eyes, twisted, ducked, and struck. One by one, the apex hybrids faltered, overpowered not by brute force but by cunning and will. High above, the Velthari commander's mandibles clicked faster, a sound of both surprise and grudging respect. He had spent lifetimes studying apex predators, training them, breeding them, commanding them. And yet here was a single human dismantling perfection, redefining the rules of combat with each movement. Elias paused briefly, leaning against the arena wall, letting himself breathe just enough to think. He calculated, adjusted, and attacked again. The hunters were relentless, but fatigue began to weigh on them. Their precision faltered. Their coordination cracked, and every misstep Elias exploited with cold efficiency. Finally, the last hunter lunged in a desperate attempt. Elias sidestepped, grabbed its jaw, twisted, and sent it crashing to the sand. Silence fell once more. Blood and sweat mixed with the dust, painting the arena in raw testament to survival. The crowd did not cheer. They were too stunned to speak. Even the med drones hovered in hesitant awe. The Velthari commander stepped down into the arena, claws brushing stone lightly. He moved with purpose now, not as an observer, but as someone who recognized the impossible. "Human," he said, his voice sharp but carrying weight. "You have broken the laws we lived by. You have shown strength, strategy, and endurance beyond measure. Apex hunters do not fail, yet you have survived them all." Elias lowered his blade slightly, chest rising and falling with exhaustion, sweat mixing with blood. "I fight because I have no choice," he replied, voice steady but hoarse. "I survive because giving up is not an option." For a long moment the commander studied him. Then he nodded slowly, a signal of recognition among predators. He had underestimated humans. He had dismissed them as fragile, weak, and irrelevant. But now, standing in the sand-streaked arena, he understood. This human was more than a fighter. He was a reckoning. And somewhere deep in Elias' chest, a quiet thought settled. The fight was far from over. The arena was not just a place of trials. It was a stage where legends were born, and he had just begun to write his. The apex hunters, those who had once believed themselves untouchable, now realized that the rules had changed. Survival, cunning, and determination were no longer theirs alone. The human had rewritten the game. Elias glanced at the commander. Respect and wariness mingled in the alien's eyes. "Do not think," he said quietly, "that your apex rules still stand." The commander's reply was measured, almost like a vow. "We will see, human, we will see." And for the first time in generations, the apex hunters were no longer sure of what would happen next. The human had shown them fear, and in the shadow of that fear, a new game had begun. The arena gates rumbled open once more, but this time Elias did not see beasts. He saw machines, war constructs designed by the Velthari to hunt, track, and end life with perfect precision. They moved silently, their metal limbs glinting under the harsh lights, scanners flickering like artificial eyes. Apex hunters rarely deployed such instruments against a single challenger. It was considered unnecessary. Yet here the commander had something in mind. Elias adjusted his stance. His body screamed with fatigue, muscles trembling, wounds aching with every heartbeat. He could barely lift his blade, but his mind was sharp. Every calculated step, every instinct honed over decades told him that this challenge was different. It was not just about survival. It was about proving something no one had ever considered possible, that a human could stand against perfection and endure. The constructs moved first. One lunged with mechanical precision, blades slicing through the air. Elias ducked, feeling the wind of its strike graze his cheek. He rolled, hitting the ground hard, and sprang up, delivering a swift strike to a joint he had learned to exploit in a split second. Sparks flew. Metal screeched against metal, but the human did not stop. He struck again, weaving through a web of attacks with a fluidity that amazed even the veteran apex hunters watching above. Pain tore through his shoulder, a reminder that he was not invincible. But Elias used the sensation, letting it anchor him, forcing him to move smarter, strike faster. The machines adapted quickly, but his mind adapted faster. He observed patterns, predicted movements, and exploited even the smallest hesitation. High above, the Velthari commander leaned forward. "Remarkable," he murmured. "He anticipates the impossible." Among the gathered apex hunters, disbelief hung thick. No human had ever faced the machines alone and survived. One construct slammed into Elias from the side, throwing him against the arena wall. He groaned, tasting blood in his mouth, but rolled with the momentum and struck at its exposed joint. The machine faltered, then adjusted, but not fast enough. Elias pressed the attack, striking, dodging, and weaving in a rhythm that seemed almost alive. Seconds stretched like hours. The crowd had fallen silent. Only the hum of the machines and the ragged breathing of the human filled the air. He moved with desperation and precision, weaving between death and survival, letting instinct guide him when his strength failed. The first construct toppled. Sparks and smoke rose as Elias used the weight of its fall to slam into the next. The machines recalibrated, faster, more coordinated, but his strategy had shifted too. He became unpredictable, striking at angles no programming could anticipate. The Velthari commander's mandibles clicked sharply. He had created hunters that could not fail, and yet here was a human rewriting the rules with sheer will and ingenuity. "Perhaps," he said under his breath, "humans are more dangerous than we allowed ourselves to believe." Another construct lunged, blades spinning like deadly fans. Elias ducked beneath the strike, felt the scrape of metal across his back, and retaliated with a precise blow that disabled its central limb. Sparks flew, and the machine fell with a deafening crash. By now, Elias was bleeding from multiple wounds. His armor was shattered, his muscles trembling with exhaustion, yet his eyes burned with unyielding determination. He knew one thing clearly: survival was not about strength alone. It was about persistence, ingenuity, and refusing to bow, even when the world wanted you broken. The remaining machines hesitated, scanning, analyzing, adapting, but hesitation was all Elias needed. He struck again, faster, harder, each move exploiting the smallest flaw. One by one, the machines fell, and the arena grew quiet except for the humans' ragged breaths. Finally, silence. Elias stood amidst the wreckage of metal and sparks, his chest rising and falling. The crowd erupted in disbelief, and all their cheers mixed with stunned whispers. Apex hunters stared from the balconies, some mouths open, others unmoving, realizing they had witnessed something extraordinary. A human had survived what was meant to be impossible. The Velthari commander descended, eyes locked on Elias. "You have surpassed every expectation," he said quietly, almost reverently. "Not through technology, not through breeding, not through instinct alone, but through sheer will. You have earned more than survival. You have earned recognition." Elias did not smile. He did not celebrate. He only allowed himself a small nod. Every wound, every scar, every drop of blood had brought him here. And yet he knew this was only the beginning. In that moment, one thing was clear to everyone present. The apex hunters would never underestimate a human again. And Elias, battered, bleeding, but unbroken, had become more than a fighter. He had become a symbol. A symbol that survival could defy the rules, that willpower could challenge perfection, that one human could stand against the apex and change the game forever. The arena fell silent as the dust settled. Elias' chest heaved with each breath, blood caking his armor, muscles trembling from exhaustion. Every nerve in his body screamed for rest, but he stood tall, however unsteady, surveying the wreckage of machines and fallen beasts. The crowd, once raucous, now whispered in awe, their voices a mixture of fear and admiration. He had done what no human had ever done. He had survived. High above, the Velthari commander regarded him with an intensity that bordered on fascination. The alien had spent centuries perfecting apex hunters, creatures bred for war and survival, and yet this human had faced them all alone and endured. "He is extraordinary," the commander murmured, his mandibles clicking in a rhythm of disbelief. Around him, the apex hunters exchanged uneasy glances. Humans were small, fragile, insignificant, or so they had always believed. Now that belief was shattered. Elias shifted slightly, wincing as pain shot through his shoulder. Every wound, every bruise, every gash was a reminder of what he had faced. Yet his expression held no regret, no fear, only resolve. He had survived not because of strength alone, but because he refused to surrender, because he had fought with a mind that calculated, adapted, and never gave in. A low murmur ran through the crowd as the commander descended from the balcony. Every step echoed across the stone arena, a predator approaching a rival it could not fully measure. "Human," he said, his voice steady, commanding, yet tinged with respect. "You have challenged what we thought immutable. You have survived trials no one else could endure. You have earned recognition among the apex." Elias nodded once, acknowledging the words but saying nothing. Recognition mattered little, survival mattered everything. Yet even he felt a flicker of something unfamiliar, pride, tempered by the knowledge that his journey was far from over. He had fought monsters, machines, and apex predators alike, but the battle within, the one to keep moving, to endure, to never give up, was far from finished. The Velthari commander studied him, claws brushing lightly against the stone. "You fight not for glory nor for challenge alone. You fight for something deeper. Purpose drives you where instinct alone cannot," he said quietly. The apex hunters around him nodded, understanding that this human strength was not born of physical might, but of will, strategy, and resilience. Elias' gaze shifted across the arena. The fallen beasts and shattered machines littered the ground, silent witnesses to his determination. He remembered each moment of doubt he had overcome, each strike he had survived, each calculated risk that had kept him alive. And in that reflection, he understood something profoundly simple yet powerful. Humans endured not because they were strongest, but because they refused to be broken. The commander's voice cut through the haze of the arena. "You have done more than survive. You have changed how we perceive you, your kind. Apex hunters will speak of this day for generations, and you will be remembered." Elias allowed himself a slow breath, finally lowering his blade. Pain radiated through his body, but it was tempered by clarity. He had fought not to prove a point, not for the cheers, not for recognition. He had fought because he could not do otherwise. Survival was instinct. Humanity was will, and he had embodied both in the face of impossible odds. As he took a cautious step forward, the crowd began to cheer, not the mocking laughter of before, but a genuine, awed celebration. Apex hunters, the very creatures who had once ruled without question, now watched in silent reverence. Elias had endured, and in doing so, he had rewritten the rules of the arena. The commander inclined his head slightly. "You are not merely a human fighter. You are a force that cannot be dismissed, a presence that even apex hunters must reckon with. Remember this day." Elias' eyes flicked to the commander, then to the silent witnesses around him. A quiet understanding passed between them. This was more than a victory. It was a statement, a warning, a new reality. The arena lights dimmed, the sand settling over the remains of combatants, yet Elias stood unbowed, bleeding, exhausted, yet undeniably alive. In that moment, the apex hunters understood fully. Survival was no longer solely theirs to define. And Elias, human, small, fragile in appearance, had proven that determination, courage, and unyielding will could surpass even the greatest predators the galaxy had ever known. For the first time, humans were no longer prey. They were contenders, and Elias had become the living proof. The arena was quiet now, the echoes of battle fading into the stillness of stone and sand. Elias stood amidst the remnants of what had been designed to end him, beasts, machines, and apex predators reduced to silent forms. His body ached, every joint screaming, every muscle threatening to give way, yet he remained upright. He had survived when no one thought he could. He had proven the impossible. The Velthari commander approached, his towering figure casting a long shadow across the arena. The alien's eyes, once sharp with amusement and skepticism, now held something else: respect, curiosity, and perhaps even caution. "Human," he said, voice low and deliberate, "you have defied everything we believed. You faced creatures that strike fear into our kind, and you endured, not by chance, not by luck, by will." Elias' chest rose and fell, exhaustion heavy upon him, but he met the commander's gaze steadily. "I fight because I have to," he replied quietly. "I survive because giving up is not an option. That is all any human or any being can do." A murmur ran through the apex hunters watching from above. Some had never seen such determination. Others, seasoned veterans, felt a flicker of fear they had long believed extinct. Elias was not just strong. He was relentless, strategic, unbreakable, and in that moment they understood the full scope of what they had underestimated. The commander's claws traced lightly along the arena stone. "Your kind, we dismissed you as fragile, weak, but you have shown that strength is not always in size or speed or teeth. It is in the mind, in the heart, in the refusal to yield." His mandibles clicked thoughtfully. "A human has earned the respect of apex hunters, perhaps even the fear." Elias allowed himself a slow exhale, tasting the metallic tang of blood and sweat. Pain throbbed through him, yet he did not stagger. Each scar, each wound, each bruise was proof of survival, a testament that humanity could endure what others could not. He had faced predators bred to perfection, machines designed to kill, and still here he stood, alive, unbowed, and undefeated. The commander gestured toward the arena gates. "You may leave as a victor," he said. "But know this, the galaxy watches now. Apex hunters will remember you. Your people, they will no longer be dismissed. You have changed the game. Humanity is no longer prey." Elias' gaze drifted to the stands. The crowd, once mocking, now erupted in awestruck cheers, their laughter replaced with genuine admiration. Apex hunters whispered among themselves, voices low but tense, realizing the balance of fear and power had shifted. For centuries, they had been apex, and now one human had rewritten that understanding. He took a step forward, every movement deliberate despite the pain. The arena had been a crucible, and he had emerged forged stronger than any of them could have anticipated. He was no longer simply a fighter. He was a symbol of endurance, of will, of humanity's defiance in the face of impossibility. The commander inclined his head in acknowledgement, a silent vow passing between them. "You are not merely a survivor," he said. "You are a reckoning the galaxy will remember today." Elias nodded once, weary but steady. He did not boast. He did not shout. He did not need to. Every eye in the arena, every mind watching from above, understood the truth. Humans could endure, humans could defy, and humans could inspire. As he limped toward the exit, leaving behind the broken predators and scorched earth, he carried with him more than victory. He carried a message, one that would echo through every corner of the galaxy. The human spirit was unpredictable, unyielding, and perhaps in the eyes of apex predators unstoppable. And so Elias Rourke, battered, bleeding, and undeniably alive, walked from the arena not just as a fighter who had survived, but as the human who had changed the hunt forever. The galaxy would never see humans the same way again. The laughter that had greeted him at the gates was gone, replaced with something heavier, deeper: respect, fear, and the beginning of a legend. Elias' eyes lifted to the horizon. Ahead lay more battles, more challenges, more impossible odds. But he knew one unshakable truth: no predator, no machine, no apex force could ever take away what he had proven today. He was human. He endured, and that alone was enough to change the course of history.